Well, guys, who would have ever thought that that would happen on Saturday afternoon in Death Valley? A Clemson team that was so beleaguered, beaten, broken, so much to be downtrodden about, and then you come out and maybe your biggest game, well, maybe not your biggest game, but against perhaps the best or one of the top two best teams you've played all year. Something clicks, you put it all together, and you beat Notre Dame. Clifton, how about it?
Man, how about it, dude? That I called it, man.
Yes, you did.
27. I called it 27-22, and everybody was. And now, Griffin, I'm getting on you here, buddy, because I was getting on the defense last week, and I was like, they got to create some turnovers. They're not creating turnovers, and what did they do? They created turnovers, and we won the ball game. And so I'm excited. I'm undefeated in the box, just FYI. So when I sit in the box, we're 1-0. Yeah, I'm excited. The defense played well. The offense played really well. They did some things differently. They did some different things up front. They were doing some zone blocking instead of all that pulling, and like Garrett Riley likes to do. And I don't know what to think of it. It was good for that game, but is that what we're going to be doing going forward? I don't know. But it worked well. It worked really well. So, man, Phil Maffa is the man. He really is.
Well, I mean, we've been saying it, and Clifton, you did call this, so credit where it's due. Now, the only thing I've got to say is go buy a lottery ticket for me tomorrow. I've never won more than $20 off of a lottery ticket before, so I feel like if you buy it for me at this point, my odds are probably exponentially increasing.
Yeah.
Luck of the Irish right there.
Yeah, for sure, man.
No pun intended, right, Griffin?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, man, I mean, where did that come from on Saturday? Part of me wants to think that this team had heard all of the noise and all of the bad mouthing and all the smack talk about them for really the entire season, but that had really culminated after the losses to Miami and NC State. And it all boiled down to the fact that they were having their manhood challenged, for lack of any better way of saying it. And part of me wants to think they just finally made up their mind that we're tired of being hit in the mouth, and we're just going to go out and we're going to knock the bully down, and we're going to put an end to this.
For sure. And the biggest thing for Clemson in this game was they had to strike first. And they did that perfectly with the Phil Maffa house call. And I think that set up the game perfectly. It for sure changed the momentum of the game because Notre Dame are a team that like to control the game when they're up. Obviously, they did score the field goal. SMA helped them early on. But yeah, like you guys said, this is a game that I think it just changes the program, not as a whole, but the culture of it for the rest of the season, because, you're down and out the last two games, losing to NC State and Miami. You didn't really get that first quarter touchdown. Hell, that Phil Maffa touchdown was the first quarter touchdown since Syracuse, which was September 30th, I believe. They didn't score a first quarter touchdown in a month, which it's a lot of games. But I'm happy for this team. Everything was clicking at the right moment. They did everything that they needed to do to win. And Clifton, like you said, the defense came in clutch at the end when it came to turning the ball over, to forcing Sam Hartman to turn the ball over on downs. It was just a great game. It was a great atmosphere being up in the box, seeing everyone rush the field. It was just an overall great day to be a Clemson Tiger, like we always say.
I just want to point this out. I wore this for a reason tonight. Everybody likes a good sequel, right? BYOG. Sure. That was born out of a win over Notre Dame. Everybody remembers the Hurricane game in 2015. It was a watershed moment for the Clemson football program. Again, no pun intended. But we saw on Saturday afternoon this Clemson team bring their own guts, because they sure didn't have any, or they were running low on them coming into that ball game. But they went and found some somewhere. And when the chips were down and when they needed the defense to rise up and make a play, or when they needed a first down on offense, they found ways to get those things that we had not seen up until that point this season. And so whatever it is that they had to reach down and unearth and exhume and dig up, well, by God, it worked.
this
Yes,
team,
it did.
the team played. I don't know if you guys saw these comparisons, but the team played a lot like they did against Florida State in terms of making those key plays, not only on offense but on defense. But the only thing that the Florida State game did not have that the Notre Dame game had was the ability to execute at the end of the game, because obviously Clemson was up against Florida State the first half. Clemson was up big on Notre Dame in the first half as well. There was a standing ovation in Memorial Stadium when the Tigers were running off. That's how great of a first half they had. The second half was when Clemson, I don't know if crumble is the best word to put it, but Florida State began to take over the game. They took it away in overtime. But this time, I mean, and it shows with the schedule and the experience, this Clemson defense kind of rose above and took away any shot that Notre Dame had at winning the game, because they were driving late in that game. I know Sam Hartman had a huge run for a touchdown. I think they scored on back-to-back touchdown drives, but the ability for the Clemson defense to completely shut them down and turn the ball over as well is something that, was very positive, especially for the fact that I think the whole Clemson secondary was out. I know Sheridan Jones was out. I know RJ Mickens was out. Nate Wiggins didn't start. He was on, I think he didn't.
Accountability points.
Yeah,
It was
exactly. So
accountability.
not only did the Clemson defense show out, it was the younger guys who made the difference, which is something that's very optimistic for this program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how about
And
Kylan Griffin, man? My goodness, that's a young guy. A Clemson fan. I'm not sure that any or most Clemson fans knew who Kylan Griffin was before
never even heard of
Saturday.
him.
I tell you what, they know who he is now. So does Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So he wasn't supposed to play all week because of the injuries. Dabo said in the press conference that he found out that he was going to play on Thursday. He was given 2 days notice, and he had the game-clinching interception, which like we've said time and time again on this podcast, like, it's just an embarrassment of riches at this point when it comes to the amount of talent that Clemson has. So you got to feel for him. He's a freshman on top of the world, but maybe another big prospect in the works for Clemson. I'm really happy for the kid. Maybe because he's got a great last name, but at the same time, he did a great job.
Yeah, I'll go back to what I was going to say earlier. When Maffa broke past the line on that 41-yard touchdown, Griffin can attest to this. I almost got kicked out of the press box because I was a little noisy.
That's true. Yeah, I will attest to that.
I almost jumped out of my seat. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I will say this, y'all. Clemson did a lot of things on, especially the offensive line, that they didn't do. And I think that threw Notre Dame off, especially the whole first half, because they weren't expecting us to do zone blocking at all.
Right.
Like, that was last year's team, right? Like, this year's team was supposed to do all this pulling guards and, different type of blocking and stuff like that. And they didn't do that. They didn't do any of that.
Well, and two, you were down. You talk about being riddled with injuries, and this is an offensive line that, frankly, was a mash unit coming in. You were forced to play some of those younger guys like the Harris Sewells of the world. And, man, they just stepped right in, and not only were they serviceable, they were phenomenal, all things considered. It was probably the highest grading game of the year for the offensive line, and they were doing it with these greenhorn youngsters in there. So when you go back and look in retrospect, do you have to keep these guys in the rotation, some of these young guys in the rotation? Obviously, something clicked. It worked against a top 15 ranked team. So I'm not sure that after the way they played on Saturday, you can afford to just keep them on the bench going forward.
I have to agree with that. And Notre Dame has an incredible defense. They're always known for, being a gritty team, being able to pick teams apart, make them crumble. And 2 freshmen on the line were able to do that. And not only that, I don't think anybody's graduating next year when it comes to the line. Give them time to develop, because it's like we've said before, it's a very experienced position. So
yeah, we got one person leaving on the offensive line.
You got to keep everything together.
He's injured. He's injured. That's right. So
Walker Parks.
Yeah,
I think he's coming back.
Wasn't he the only one that was leaving?
He was leaving, but I think he's using his extra year. I don't know if it's from red shirt or it's from
Walker
injury.
Parks is coming back. Yep,
he'll be back.
Yeah, I think it's because of injury.
I was just gonna say it's huge. It's really nice to have an offensive line that's worked like that, and you got to keep it together for the next 3 games and see how they work together, especially against other defenses.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we finally found the right 5 up front. And I think they need to consistently start those guys so they can get some cohesiveness, familiarity. I guess that's the right word for it, because they dominated up front a good Notre Dame defensive line.
Right. Now, I want to talk about some of the unsung heroes from Saturday. And I have seen this mentioned in some smaller circles, but, I don't know that I've seen anything in terms of a wider national media perspective that has really touched on this all that heavily. Now, everybody knows how good the Clemson defense was on Saturday. You look at Estime, the running back, he only rushed, I think, for less than 40 yards after the first quarter. Which was just an amazing performance by that Clemson defense. But what helped put Clemson's defense in the position to be so effective over the final quarter and a half of that ball game? Special teams. What about
huge. Yeah,
Aiden
huge.
Swanson had the game of his life. And when the offense went conservative, from about midway through the third quarter to the end of the ball game, couldn't put any more points on the board. But how many times did Aiden Swanson pin Notre Dame inside the 10-yard line, and they were just never able to escape the shadow of their own end zone at any point?
Mm-mm.
How about Cade Klubnik with his punt too? That was inside the 20 as well.
The pooch punt from Cade Klubnik. I was actually on my way home from Columbia, and don't worry, I didn't go anywhere near. I didn't go anywhere near the dark alleys around Williams-Brice Stadium, but I wasn't that deep into the abyss. But I was actually listening to the game on my way home, and when Don Munson said that Coach Dabo was keeping the offense on the field, I'm sitting there thinking, "What are you doing? It's 4th and 4 or 5, whatever it was." Don't risk giving Notre Dame the ball near midfield, and it's just a one-score game. And then Klubnik pooches it down inside the 5-yard line, and we get a stop and get the ball back. I'm like, hot damn. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, Dabo said in his press conference that he put that in there, but he put that in the rotation about 3 years ago. It's a PPO, a punt pass option. because he said he had the option to pass it, punt it, but he said if it was open, pass it. If it wasn't, punt it. And it wasn't open, so he boomed it. 37 yards.
How about that?
So, yeah, that's wild.
Nah, I was just gonna say it was funny to watch, but it was a very smart play, and I think special teams won Clemson this game, and that's very surprising. Because Clemson has lost every game that they've lost because of special teams.
Right.
So then again, it just shows the turnaround that this team has made, the experience that they've gained. And, it's just been really – it was finally nice to see after just everything goes the other way.
And
all the special teams.
Yeah, Jonathan White's knocking down a field goal too.
Yeah, he knocked down a field goal as well.
I'm not saying he's not going to go out there and make every kick, but – Jonathan White's has gotten, at least to my eye, a bit more dependable lately.
For sure.
I mean, it took him a few games, right? Like, you can't just come into a game and not – I mean, like you were saying a couple weeks ago, you come into the Florida State game, hadn't played a game, hadn't been on a football team in a whole year, and you're about to go to New York to have a job, and, he's going to miss a few, right? So, he's getting more dependable, and we're still kicking it in the end zone, and with guns. So I mean, the special teams did amazing, and I'll agree with y'all about that. The special teams and Phil Maffa won us, and the offensive line won us that ball game. But something that concerned me a little bit about the offense was the passing game. He only threw the ball for a little over 100 yards, I think.
For me, I didn't think that he was going to pass the ball a lot. I mean, look at how other teams have look at Ohio State and how they played the passing game, and they have two of the best receivers in the country. Notre Dame has always been known for having ball hawks of cornerbacks and safeties, and I said last week that Phil Maffa and the defense will most likely have to win this game and contain Notre Dame. And they basically did all that they needed. And Cade made some big third down passes. He made some big passes to He made the touchdown pass to Tyler Brown, which, I think everything was asked of him. I don't think that he was supposed to have a big game in this situation. I mean, maybe for Georgia Tech next week, he might need to have a bigger game, which, we'll get to later. But I think he did everything he needed to. And if that's having a quiet game and letting a guy like Phil Maffa erupt, be my guest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And guys, I saw a perspective on this just earlier today, actually. And what the speculation was that for the first time this year, Clemson has run everything offensively through Cade Klubnik through the first 7-8 games of the year. And we've seen at times that almost become a bit overwhelming for him. And that's when the mistakes start happening. He starts to force the issue.
Yeah.
We didn't see that Saturday. Cade Klubnik was asked to be a game manager, not somebody who had to put the entire weight of it on his shoulders and carry the team. I really think that helped him compartmentalize and slow the game down and make some better decisions. Even the interception he threw wasn't on him. It's a ball that Bo Collins has got to catch. He whiffed on it. The ball gets deflected up. It gets picked off. That's not on Cade. It was a good throw. It was on target. And so I think by taking that load off of his shoulders and just allowing him to feed Phil Maffa, who was just teeing off on Notre Dame's defense, that slowed things down and allowed Cade to become more effective. So I'll be interested to see if that's not the offensive approach that they take more going forward.
I think you could translate that to every game. I think that Cade doesn't do as good as he does when he's up. I think, like you said, Garrett, he serves more as a game manager, and you have to get on the board first. So that's why I was very optimistic about the Maffa touchdown, because every time Clemson scores in the first quarter and they're kind of in charge at first, you're going to see a lot better game out of Cade Klubnik compared to when he's down. He has to make the big play, and sometimes, and we saw this even at Notre Dame too, he might not make the best pass or he might not make the right read. And I think that's why sometimes the offense has struggled a little bit, because you can mirror Cade and the previous quarterbacks in different manners, but I think that he still had an excellent game despite what the numbers say. He did everything that he needed to do to win, and he did it. That's all you need to ask for.
Yeah, I was gonna say, now we've just got to throw this out there, because I'm gonna rub the little crystal ball here. I'm gonna look into my little psychic portal, and I'm going to guess that both of you were sitting there sweating bullets when Phil Maffa fumbled the football on that last play. You had to be thinking, oh my God, here we go again. You come all this way. It was almost like the Florida State game. You come all this way. You're on the cusp of a huge win, and then something goes wrong, and you find a way to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. What was going through your head?
I was worried. Okay, but I wasn't worried as much as I've been in previous games. I thought the defense controlled Sam Hartman and Audric Estime and Notre Dame to an extent that I didn't think that Sam Hartman was going to get going like that and, take the team down the field and score. Was I worried that it could potentially happen? Obviously, because it's Clemson, and that's what the season that we've had so far. But I think the defense was just very dominant, especially in the fourth quarter, that there was something in my gut saying that we were going to be okay because the defense carried us this far. They even scored points for us. They were obviously going to do the job to an extent. I didn't think that Sam Hartman was going to do that, but obviously he could have. But I wasn't worried as I would have been in previous games.
Yeah, I agree with that. Our defense was just so dominant, up till that point. I was almost thinking, like, let's don't pull a Miami. And I was wondering why we were running the ball. But with so much time on the clock, we really didn't have enough time to knit. I mean, like, TigerNet was on my left side. Clemson Sports.com or whatever was on one side. And they were both saying, why are we running the ball? And then we go into the press conference and Dabo's like, in that situation, you have to run the ball. You can't kneel on it. And you saw that because, we ran out. we eventually ran out the clock, and then we threw the ball, basically out of bounds to run the clock out.
Well, here's the thing, and when you go back and look at it, if Maffa doesn't fumble the ball right there, it's a first down. I mean, he was across the line to gain for the first down when the ball came out. If he holds on to it there, then it's a moot point anyway, really, because at that point you're going victory formation. But Griffin, I agree with you. And I was initially shocked when he fumbled it, but then I'm sitting here thinking to myself, now I have just listened to our defense completely shut this crowd down in their tracks for all but one drive of the second half. And frankly, I just did not think Notre Dame was going to capitalize on that. They had shown no indications throughout that game that they were going to be able to take advantage, and they didn't. And let me throw this stat out at you. Sam Hartman finishes his collegiate career 0-6 against Clemson. I don't know that there is anybody ready to not have to face the Clemson Tigers again than Sam Hartman.
Yeah. And I thought Sam Hartman was gonna have a much better game, and I was wrong. And you got to give credit to Wes Goodwin. And I think that the way that he coordinated the defense against an offense that has had much success like Notre Dame, you have to tip your hat to him, and you have to. I think he cemented his spot as the defensive coordinator. I loved what he did on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job, and he showed some emotion. Like, I saw him jumping up and chest bumping, some defensive linemen, when they were coming off the field after getting a turnover or whatever, So I think that's good, and I totally agree with you that he's our defensive coordinator, and he's good.
He silenced a lot of people.
Oh yeah, he definitely did.
Yeah, I think so too. And guys, before we wrap this up, talking about Notre Dame, I've got to throw this out there. And I guess as Clemson fans, we should expect this by now. It comes as no surprise, but Paul Feinbaum took a derisive shot at Dabo Swinney for his celebration after the Notre Dame game, pretty much along the lines of, I guess you gotta find reasons to celebrate. When you're as bad as you are and you've hit rock bottom and all this and that. Well, all I've got to say is this, Paul. One of us is going to be down to Alabama. I know you probably got your little burner apartment somewhere behind Saban's woodshed in Tuscaloosa. One of us is going to be down there to collect the rent money because we've lived rent free in your head for too long now, buddy. So maybe just maybe Paul Feinbaum should take Dabo Swinney's advice and buy up all that stock. He might be a richer man in the next couple of years if he does.
I definitely agree with you. And that was the best quote, or the best little tweetable quote ever.
That quote will either be on a shirt like Garrett has on right now, or it will be in infamy on social media for the remainder of time when people talk about Clemson football. That's the one way or the other. That's always how it goes with, a coach that generates so much national media that Dabo does. So I believe him. I think you'll see that name on a shirt. I think you'll see that quote on a shirt at some point, but you gotta stay focused. You got 3 very, very competitive games in the next 3 weeks, and you got to finish off the season strong.
And guys, we'll end on this thought right here, but does this not seem like a jump starter? It may, not even just for the rest of this season, but going forward. It just felt like that this was the Dabo Swinney that thrived on being called an underdog and being counted out. This was the Clemson team that thrived on being told that they were no good and they couldn't do it. This was the Clemson team we've been waiting to see for the last 3 seasons. One that just got tired of all the bad-mouthing and all the talk about how bad that they were, and they just came out and said, no more, we're done. They put their foot down, and they took the life right out of Notre Dame. It just felt like those Clemson teams all over again, and I hope I'm right on this, but it just felt like that this could be a starter not only for the rest of this year, but even into next year and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and Dabo said in his press conference, he said the last win against Notre Dame projected us on a 5-year window, and this one will too. He said, "Y'all get ready for the ride."
I think it's just important for sure. You have 3 big games: Georgia Tech, North Carolina, South Carolina, who all spell trouble of their own in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you could tell off the Gamecocks for all you want, but they got players that could play. But yeah, I have to agree with that. If you win the next 3, 4 going into a bowl game against a valuable opponent, you're completely changing the culture going into the offseason, and it's a massive Kickstarter, and it starts with last week. It's a huge win. It's a huge win. Every fan's happy. Everyone's a little bit more optimistic than they were before. Like I said before, it's just a great time to be a Clemson Tiger.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, talking about Kickstarters, everybody, kickstart your game day plans with our fine sponsor, Ardens Burger and Grill at 1280 18 Mile Road in Central South Carolina. Go see them, get some of their famous double dip wings, mouthwatering burgers, sizzling grills. They've even got great Asian food as well. Anything to satisfy your palate and cater to your game day needs. There's some great folks over there. They'll be sure to help you out. You can tell them that their friends from Around the Paul sent you there. So go check out our sponsor, Ardens Burger Grill at 1280 18 Mile Road Central, and thank them for sponsoring what we do here on Around the Paul. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to celebrate just a little bit more that went over Notre Dame, but pretty soon we're going to be turning the page over and getting ready to face another tough opponent, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And we're going to break that game down, and we're going to talk all about that matchup on the next episode of Around the Paul. But we hope you've enjoyed this one. We're going to enjoy this win over Notre Dame. It's been a long time coming. It feels like the ship's finally sailing in the right direction. And as Griffin said, it's a great day to be a Clemson Tiger, and it's a great day to beat Notre Dame too. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you on the next go-round. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.